What's up, everyone? My name is Nacho, and today we're going to be talking about a new film that just released entitled Wolfman. This is the latest Universal Monsters remake film from director Lee Winnell, who previously made the remake of The Invisible Man, and he also made Upgrade. It stars Christopher Abbott as Blake, Julia Garner as Charlotte, and Matilda Firth as Ginger. Before we go into any spoilers or my thoughts on the film, I'm just going to read the quick plot synopsis. Blake and his family are attacked by an unseen animal and, in a desperate escape, barricade themselves inside a farmhouse as the creature prowls the perimeter. As the night stretches on, however, Blake begins to behave strangely, transforming into something unrecognizable that soon jeopardizes his wife and daughter. So, to preface my thoughts on this film, I am a huge fan of the Universal monster, the Wolfman. Um, Werewolves are cool. I love looking at the behind the scenes videos of how they create werewolves with practical effects in films and TV. That's one of my that's just something that I think is super cool. I love watching werewolf movies around Halloween. Just like to see that behind the scenes features on how they make these monsters with real tools and props. So yeah, I would definitely say the Wolfman or werewolf is my favorite universal monster, or just my favorite type of monster. And so when they first announced that this film was going into production, I was pretty excited because we haven't had a pretty good werewolf movie, at least a standalone one, in a while. Um, Especially the story of the Wolfman. I know I think it was the 2010, somewhere around there. That version of the Wolfman was not very well received. I still found some enjoyment in it. I thought it was pretty cool. We had Werewolf by Night come from Marvel. I know there was a big movie called Werewolves that came out last year. I didn't get to see it yet. Um, but from what I had seen, the practical effects in that movie were pretty cool. And I've heard pretty good things about it, so I definitely am going to be checking it out soon. But this movie had my interest in the beginning, and then I heard bad some bad things in my opinion that really did not keep my attention, or keep my interest at least in the movie. First off, we heard that it was from Blumhouse. They've had some pretty rocky films in the past, and also that they were changing the whole origin of the Wolfman in the story to have it be a virus. That somewhat interested me, but I prefer the cursed storyline. But I was still going to give them a chance to show me what they were going to do with this new take. And when the first trailer came out, definitely didn't fully impress me. I was really kind of, like I said, turned off from the film, and the fact that they were kind of secretive about the showing the Wolfman, um, it I don't know, it really did not keep my interest. I wasn't really excited to see this film. I went into it with pretty low expectations, but I still went and saw it, and um, the concept in itself was pretty cool to me. I at least wanted to see what they were going to do with the infection and what the final design of the Wolfman would be. Um, and unfortunately, they decided to show that off before the film was even released in a YouTube video. I don't know why they would do that. At this point, you held off so long. Hold off. Um, so yeah. I don't know. That being said, I can tell you that after all of my hard feelings towards this film and lack of excitement after going and actually seeing the film, I'm happy to say that I did find some enjoyment in it. The storytelling in the film was actually pretty well done. I did like the use of practical effects, especially with the transformation into the werewolf. Um, and yeah, I found the characters at least somewhat enjoyable. Some of the stuff did annoy me, which I'll go into spoilers in a second. You'll know because I'm going to put a little spoiler thingy up here. Um, but yeah, for the most part, I did find enjoyment in this film. Um, Definitely not in terms of the Wolfman story. The Wolfman story kind of let me down, and it was actually kind of sad. Um, but in terms of a film in general, it was all right. It wasn't anything crazy that you have to rush out to see. I would definitely catch a cheaper screening if you can, or even wait for streaming on this one. But um, in all, I would probably give this movie about a 5 out of 10, maybe 6 out of 10. Nothing crazy, just about average, but not bad. Not bad by any means. Um, but to bring up the point again, I did go into this movie with zero expectations. So yeah, from here I'm going to be going into spoilers. So if you are someone who wants to see this movie, spoilers are coming. So turn this video off if you care about spoilers. Come back after if you want to hear my opinions. Otherwise, if you don't really care and you want to hear what I thought about the movie and the general plot, here we go. So I'm going to take you back through the movie. Um, the movie opens on a hunting trip between Brian and his father. I mean, Blake and his father. There's also this random opening shot of a wasp being killed by ants. Nothing ever comes back to this, but it freaked me out because I'm terrified of wasps. Um, but yeah, it just goes from black after all the trailers showed off to just a wasp being killed by ants, and nothing ever ties back to this again. So whatever that was, they move into a camping trip, and you can immediately tell that Blake's father is extremely. I wouldn't say he's extremely like strict. Um, I think that's what the movie's trying to say is that he's very strict. He's very um, like scary, I guess, towards Blake. But from my perspective, he just seemed overly protective. If that, he was just being protective. They were going hunting. Blake still seemed pretty young, and he seemed like he wasn't really paying attention. And there were a couple times where he snapped at him because he was about to eat poisonous mushrooms, or he was running around with a gun. But you can definitely get the sense that Blake's father knows that there's something out here when you start hearing growling. This is the first shot that we got of the werewolf in the trailer. This is not the wolfman of the film. This is the beast that is coming after them that actually ends up infecting Blake later on in the film. So there's also with the opening, there's a story about a hitchhiker that had gone missing, like a text on a screen. And so this is presumptually the hiker that had gone missing, has gotten this fever that they know about in the area. And so Blake and his father go to hide in this deer stand in the woods as this creature um, chases after them. So later on, we move on to see that Blake has moved on from his father and has a life in San Francisco, I think. Yeah, San Francisco. He's working, he has a daughter, and he's married, and we start to see that things are not going very well for Blake at home. He is taking care of his daughter, and his wife is very busy with work. We start to see that maybe some of his father's traits have transferred down to him, in that he gets a little snappy with his wife. He wasn't even very snappy, but definitely, like I said, with his father. The movie tried to make it seem worse than it was. She was just talking on the phone while he was cooking dinner, and he asked her to stop a couple times. It was not that serious. If they wanted to make it something bigger than that, they definitely should have included something else that would have shown that. But Blake finds out that his father has passed away. He's been missing for some time. Going back to that story about the hitchhiker that was also missing for a while. Blake's father has been missing, and he gets the certificate of death and the keys to his farmhouse. And so at this point, Blake tells his wife that he can see that they are struggling as a couple, and he knows that life is short, so he wants to make the best of the time that they have together while they can. And he thinks that them all going to this farmhouse that his father owned, where he grew up, is going to, for the summer, is going to bring them all closer. So they go to the farmhouse for the summer. They get lost on their way up there because there's no signal. And this guy named Clifton, I think is his name. Cannot remember his name. But he's basically like a neighbor. He shows up, and Derek is his name. Sorry. Derek is there. He's in one of those deer stands. He almost looks dead as well because he's just standing there. And his daughter is the first to see him, and she says there's a guy standing out there. And he rolls down the window and calls for the guy. And Derek walks over and starts talking to them. And he said that he knew his dad, and he said that he knew him from when he was younger, but Blake does not recognize him. And so he asks for directions to his dad's house because they're lost. And Derek jumps in their car and makes them all a little uncomfy because he's a little creepy. And tells them that he can lead them to the dad's house. Now, Derek also says that he just gives them a reminder because he thinks that Blake doesn't remember from when he was younger that the people there don't usually go out when it's dark out and that they need to get home soon before it gets dark. And so you're like, okay, probably because of whatever that creature was. Well, the next scene, they do like a little jump cut. And the next scene, it's pitch black. Before, it wasn't even like sunset. It was like sunny out. So I don't know how long they were driving for because it seemed like he thought that he was pretty close to his dad's house. But apparently he wasn't, or else the sun just sets real quick there because it's pitch black out and they're driving. So all I can think about is what happened? Clearly something's about to happen because it's dark when he said don't be out in the dark. So they're driving, and Blake is not paying attention to the road because he keeps talking to everybody and turning around to talk to his daughter, turning around and talk to his wife, and then laughing. And one of the times he's talking to his daughter Ginger, he turns back around and there's a creature crouched in the street. And so instead of just hitting his brakes and swerving a little bit, he full on swerves the wheel, takes the U-Haul with everybody in it, still Derek too, takes it off the cliff, and they get wedged in like some trees, and so they're like kind of dangling, but it's on the side, it's on the passenger side that's facing towards the ground. So Derek falls out of the car and just lands on the ground. It's pretty like big fall. So he is out laying there. Charlotte and Ginger climb out of the window and get on top of the U-Haul, and Blake is trying to close the door for some reason instead of just climbing out of the well. So he's reaching over to close the door, and you can see this perspective of the rear view mirror and the door that's open, it's hanging, that something's slowly walking towards them, slowly stepping towards them. And you assume that him reaching out, because they keep showing a close up of him reaching his arm out, and you assume that because he's doing that, something's going to scratch him. No, he closes the door. When he's trying to get out, something grabs Derek and slashes in the window, scratching Blake, and drags Derek away. And so at this point, the family all climbs out of the car. Blake doesn't pay attention to his scratch on his arm. He doesn't tell anyone about it. And they start running. And I'm going to bring this up again, but Ginger was the most annoying character in this entire movie. They ran for like 5 seconds after she's been sitting in the car this whole time, and keep in mind, the character of Ginger was written to be like 3 or 4 based on the way that she acted. She's like 10, maybe 8, but they're running for like 3 minutes, if that. She's like, I can't run anymore, I'm too tired. I'm too tired, Dad, carry me. Something is running after you and you're scared for your life and you're going to complain that you're too tired. Come on. Anyway, they have this whole weird interaction where Blake then picks her up, puts her on his shoulders, and starts running. And then 2 seconds later, he's like, I think I know that land. And so he puts her back down right after he had just put her on his shoulders and hands her to the wife. And they run to the farmhouse because it's right there. They just barely make it into the farmhouse before the creature gets to the door. He got those quick key tricks, so he's able to unlock the door. He can get in and make sure all the doors are locked. Keep an eye on the background of this film because they kept showing a door with a docky door on it the whole time, like in the background behind the characters when they were standing. And I was like, that's the one door you did not board up, with a giant doggy door opening at the bottom, which comes into play later on. But so at this point, they are securing the doors except for that one, and you start to see that when they go into the basement, I don't even think this shot was in the movie. It might have been when they first found it, but they go in the basement. They find a radio that his dad was previously using to communicate with his brother when he was younger. And they try to communicate with a couple people. It doesn't. They don't get any response, and that's when Charlotte finds that Blake is bleeding from his arm. So she goes to check on it. She assumes that it just got some. He says it got cut by the glass when the window broke. So she bandages it up with the first aid kit that's down there, and they go back upstairs. And that is when Blake starts to realize that things are changing. Some things are happening. Okay, um, so he it's first that I think it's right after he actually gets bandaged up. He starts smelling stuff, and he finds that his dad has like this random meat locker in his basement that has like 3 racks of meat and then like some beef jerky on a shelf. So he eats the beef jerky and he's like, "Oh, I couldn't remember how good my dad's beef jerky tasted." This movie, some of the dialogue in this movie was not the greatest. I'm just gonna say, but like I said, I had fun with it. You can laugh at it, some parts, yeah. So he finds the beef jerky. He thinks it smells real good. He eats some of it. They go back upstairs. He starts realizing that he can hear things differently now too. He thinks he hears that the wolfman outside or whatever the creature is jumping on the ceiling. So he starts walking upstairs and looking around because he hears thumping on the roof, thumping on the roof. He starts moving around, and from our perspective, that's what it is. It seems like the wolfman is trying to get in from the upstairs down, and so he gets upstairs and he finds this closet because he looks around the whole entire room and there's no one in there, and there's no windows or anything. And when he opens the closet, the thumping this whole time has been a giant tarantula that's in his closet that's climbing on the wall, and each step it takes to him, because he's got the wolf senses, to him is like thunder. Every little step is like thunder for him. Um, Also, when he took a bite of the beef jerky, he's like chewing on it, all happy, and then one of his teeth, the root and all, falls out. So his teeth are starting to fall out, and when he puts the gauze in, you start to see he's got. I don't think they were intentionally doing it at first, or they were intentionally doing it at first, but they were trying to subtly introduce that he's getting an underbite now. Because with the gauze in, it just makes his cheek look a little puffy, but then eventually his jaw starts coming out like he's getting an underbite. So yeah, they keep trying to make sure he like boards up another door with an entire shelf at one point because he starts getting nervous because the creature's still out there. They do see that there is a barn next door that has an old truck in front of it, but they never end up going there um, while Blake is still in an okay way to exist. I don't know how else to describe it. He's not. He just starts deteriorating after this. So um, you start to see that things are changing from his perspective, as like from his visual perspective and his sound perspective. Not only just because he can hear things better, but also he starts to lose his ability to understand English and to speak. From his perspective, it sounds like just random, like mess of words. But then from his perspective, he's talking fine, and from everybody else's perspective, they're talking fine, and he sounds like he's just mumbling out some nonsense. So that starts happening. His hair starts falling out. Um, they also notice that his wound starts getting worse again because it starts bleeding. Um, Before that happens, though, he sees the wolfman outside, and he walks by the window and starts following it because it's walking around the house. And he goes and stands by the door with the doggy door on it, and it grabs his leg and knocks him down. Come on, like I, anybody who was watching the movie could have called that because they kept showing it in the background. So he gets another scratch on his ankle, and it basically just makes things speed up. At this point, he cannot talk at all. He has to communicate through like writing. He writes on his little notepad that he's dying. More and more of his teeth are falling out. His hair is falling out even more. Everything looks different. Like the colors of everything look different. And so they end up making a break for it to go outside. And once they run outside, everybody piles in the car except for Charlotte, because she's the one who realizes that like things are getting bad and they need to get to a doctor, even though it's still night. This night like was the longest night ever. So they make a run for the car. Everybody gets in. This is the scene from the trailer that they showed. Um, and everybody piles in the car. You see something clearly walking in the background at one point, like when they're first getting into the car, but then nothing, like Charlotte's just chilling outside the car. She like gets a battery and starts charging the car to try to get it to turn on. Everything like boosts up. She starts getting the car to work, closes her door. Everyone's good. We're about to make an escape. Blake is just in the back seat, like growling at this point because he is like becoming animalistic. And car turns on. She hits the windshield wipers, and boom, there's the Wolfman. Um, they don't even make it out of the like spot that the car's been parked in because he pushes his hand through the windshield, grabs the gear shift, rips it out, and they're stuck. So because his arm is stuck in the glass, they all make a like run for it again, and they go and find these like farming tents things. I'm not sure what they're actually called, but they're like the semicircles that are like tarps that go over like mini greenhouses. So they climb on top of those because there's a ladder on one of them. Get rid of the ladder, and the Wolfman runs inside and starts jumping up and trying to slash at them. And Blake at this point realizes that he's the only one that has a chance at one, escaping from this thing, and two, is not well off in this point and needs to protect the other people, because the whole point of this movie, he's been saying that he's the protector. He needs to protect his daughter because his dad was too overprotective, and he wants to be the person who is protective without making people scared of him. So because of this, he jumps off and lures the Wolfman away to fight him, and they run inside. The Charlotte and Ginger run inside the house again and lock the door. And they made it this whole moment when he decided to leave, because he can't communicate. He looked at all of them and kind of nodded to himself and decided to go, and they seemed okay with it. But as soon as they got inside, Ginger grabs her mom by like the hands and looks at her and goes, "You left him outside," like full on like demon voice. And I'm like, he did that on purpose. This whole movie, he'd been telling you that he wants to protect you. And he looked at you and he went, and then went off. What is the the stupidest character in the movie? Basically, Charlotte looks at her and she says, "He was protecting you." She basically should just start shaking her by the shoulders or something because she could not get it through her mind. Um. Anyway, you hear a little whimper come from far away, and I assumed that it was Blake who got wrecked by the other Wolfman because he's not fully animalistic, and the other thing is just a psycho monster. No, Blake won apparently, and he was just standing at the door like this, like a little doggy. He was just standing outside the door, and Ginger, because she has all the decisions in this movie, says to let him inside. So Charlotte walks over and opens the door. He comes inside, and you can see he's almost bald. The underbite's more accentuated. He's running around. At one point, when his wind got worse, he also like gnawed on his arm, so his arm is like completely shredded. Um, that part right there, yeah, he just started chewing on himself. Um, but yes, so at this point, he is pretty far gone, and he actually ends up lunging at his wife at one point and starts getting up in her face and sniffing her. Um, and I think it was that point that he realized that how far gone he was, and that he was more of a danger to his family than a protector or even someone that could coexist with them safely. And he walks himself to the door and goes to let himself out and to be away from them because he knew that he was a danger and he was going to eliminate himself from the equation completely. And what happens? He just opens the door wide open, and the other Wolfman jumps inside. So we have this full-on monster fight inside of the house. I was really worried we weren't even going to get a monster fight. but we have a full-on monster fight inside the house. It looked sick. I'll go into the actual design of the Wolfman in a second. Um, but the monsters fight. Charlotte and Ginger hide in the corner. Um, it seems pretty evenly matched at this point, and Blake actually gets the upper hand, knocks the other, or because they're actually stabbing Ginger, or not Ginger. Ginger's hiding. Charlotte helps. She like stabs him in the back a couple times. Um, and so because of that, the Wolfman is distracted, and Blake runs, tackles him, and bites his throat out. He just like bites his throat out, and it is at this point that the camera pans because we still don't know what this creature is. Um, the camera pans to his arm, and we see a familiar tattoo right about here. And it's actually his dad. His dad had been missing because he had been infected by the beast from living there. And Blake realizes it's his father that he has killed. That is what happened to him. And you can see that it definitely does not sit well with him. He kind of seems a little disgusted. Um, and that's when he really decides to just leave. Um, and he goes outside, and the rest of the transformation happens. He lays in the grass. You see, this is the transformation scene they decided to just show on YouTube for some reason. He starts laying in the grass. His bones start shifting. His nails start popping off. He grabs his jaw and like shifts it into place. The rest of his hair comes out, and he looks all slimy, and his skin looks a different texture. And he looks at the trees, and they're all like, it almost looks like an infrared camera or like night vision because now he can see in the dark. And he howls. And we cut back inside, and actually, he at this point, I can't remember if he walks back in at this point or if he tries to get in and like breaks in, but they're terrified of him now. I think they locked the door on him because he ends up finding his way in from upstairs. They see him outside and they shut the door on him. He jumps upstairs. I'm pretty sure. I can't fully remember this part because I was just like, but he ends up coming inside, and all the lights are shut off because he had taken out the power. And Charlotte and Ginger decide to split up inside the living room instead of staying together. I don't know why she didn't keep her daughter next to her. But so you're wondering when he's going to show up because you could see in one side shot he was coming down the stairs sneakily. And the camera keeps panning around the living room. You don't know when he's going to pop up. They make it seem like it's going to be behind Charlotte because she's the one that they're really like following. She has the knife, and then it cuts to Ginger, and it takes a while for your own eyes to adjust to it because it's so dark. But then you see that he's crouched up next to Ginger, just like looking at her, like hunched up in like a ball. And Charlotte screams and starts attacking him. And I think at this point he wasn't fully gone mentally. I think at this point he was just trying to be with them. They end up going to the kitchen because there's a door there that's kind of open that can get back to the barn. And they make a break for the barn. And this is like the first time they've gone into the barn, which I thought they were going to do something with it. Before, there was like nothing in there. I thought maybe there could be like another wolfman in there, maybe a hiker. But no, they since the lights are still out, they grab a bear trap and they hide. And at first I didn't even notice it was a bear trap. It just looks like they grabbed like a chain, and I was like, why are you grabbing one of the loudest things? But they set up a bear trap and they hide. And it's actually a really cool perspective because they cut back to Blake's perspective as he enters the barn because he like digs underneath the door because they locked it and crawls under. And you can see that they think that they're hidden, but he can see everything. So he can see them fully just hiding there. He sees his family and he's walking up to them. But their faces look distorted. Their faces look like they're like stretched out and they're really pale. the mouths look weird, so he's not recognizing his family anymore at this point. And I think that was like the last straw before he was fully gone, at least for now. And he's walking up to them slowly, and he steps in the bear trap, and he's stuck because it's like anchored down. And so then they make another break for it. They run out into the woods, and they go up into one of those little deer traps again. Now at this point, Blake is still stuck. And what does he do? He chews his leg off. Chews his full, like from the like mid calf down, chews it off, and starts running after them, full on wolfman, like hands and feet sprint. And once he catches up to them, we have Charlotte and Ginger hiding in the little deer trap, deer whatever you call it. I don't even know. It's like they call it a tree house. They're hiding there, and it mirrors the same scene from the beginning of the movie when Blake is with his dad hiding in there. Like shot for shot, you hear him crawling up the stairs, and because it's like cold out, you can see his breath. That's all you see of him. This is his breath coming up over the door. I thought that was pretty cool. That was nice visual storytelling, at least, mirroring the beginning of the film. Um, and eventually, Blake stands up fully, looks at his family, and he whimpers. And this is what I was kind of mentioning a second ago. You can tell that he is hurting. You can tell that he doesn't want to attack them. He doesn't know what's happening. And they've had this. His little relationship with Ginger was that he called her a fortune teller or a mind reader, and she would always touch his forehead. He'd ask what she was thinking about, and she'd say that that she was his favorite daughter or the best daughter ever or something. And so, because of that, she thinks that she can read him, and she basically tells Charlotte that like he's hurting and he's ready for it to be over or something like that. And Charlotte looks at him. You can tell that she is not wanting to do anything drastic. She doesn't want to hurt him. And like that's when the wolf takes over. He lunges at her, and she shoots him point blank right in the chest, and he falls. And that is the end of Blake. They climb down, and he's shaking on the ground and dying, and that is the end of that character. And so they end up going to this like peak or this valley that was nearby that he had mentioned to them, and they see the sunrise there, and that's the end of the movie. So, yeah, there were certain parts of the movie that was interesting storytelling and interesting visually. The practical effects were definitely impressive with his gradual transformation. Um, if we want to go in to the actual design of the Wolfman, I was not a fan of it. Definitely a main thing that turned me off from this film was when they had this at Universal Horror Nights. It was just a guy in a suit, and they said it definitely looked much better in the movie, which it did. Um, but this is pretty close to what his dad looked like as a Wolfman, and I mean, for what they did with the virus, it makes sense, but it just you want to see a monster movie, and you want to see a monster. It's just like an old guy that has rabies or something. Like, so, I mean, that's what it looked like there, but this is what we got in the movie. That's what he looked like when he was fully transformed. So, definitely was underwhelming to see a Wolfman that was bald because you want to see him. I think if he had existed a little bit longer, based especially on this one, seems like his hair grows out. But the virus just initially, like, as it changes you, it just removes all your hair and makes you like new. Um, but yeah, Ginger definitely was the most annoying character in the entire movie, as kids are in horror films. But most, like a lot of the times, I was just like just um. But as a whole, I'll say the Wolfman was not my favorite movie. I definitely liked The Invisible Man more. And it could just be because I lowered my expectations to basically nothing for this film, but I did find some enjoyment in it. It was um, some of the parts were definitely enjoyable with the like body gore and the way that they utilize sound in this movie. It was really interesting. I mean, we saw it in XD at Cinemark, and the surround sound was really fun because you could the way that they tracked certain sounds when you could hear the wolfman outside the house was really cool. The way that they utilized like the noises in the woods, and then also like when he started hearing things differently was cool. The way that they utilized or the way that they like conveyed his changes in like the way he perceived things and the way reality changed around him was cool too, and the dynamic between his point of view and the family's point of view and the way that started to shift. I did like that, but just for an actual Wolfman film, definitely underwhelming. Um, I know that there's a couple other monster movies coming out this year. I think Guillermo del Toro has a Frankenstein movie coming out. I think there's a Creature from the Black Lagoon movie being made, and we just had Nosferatu, which although Nosferatu is nowhere near like included in this, I definitely it's cool that they're trying to adapt horror characters or these universal monsters for like what they would be like now, or just something a little bit more grounded in reality. But I miss the like the not the creativeness. I don't know how to say it. Just I miss the fun in it because you're going to see something that like couldn't exist in reality, if that makes sense. This the way that they presented it could exist. The Invisible Man could exist. But I missed the thing that was a little bit more like fantasy with these. I think that's what was missing. Maybe if the design had been a little bit more like monsterish and um, a little bit less drawn out, because the transformation was so drawn out throughout the movie, it was almost a little anticlimactic when like his nails popped off and his bones shifted a little bit, and then he was a wolf man because he was already basically looking like that before it happened. If it was more of like his senses were changing, his nails were popping off, and then he went outside, and then like he got the snout, he got the like jaw pop, and the bones, and he like was hunched a little bit more. Maybe that would have been something different. I don't know. Um, but regardless, I hope you enjoyed this review of The Wolfman. Um, I definitely would recommend at least checking the movie out. If you're a fan of like horror or monsters or even like the Wolfman, definitely give it a try, but go into it with low expectations. Don't think of it as anything crazy. Um, so yeah, I hope you enjoyed this review. I'm hoping to do more reviews like this, where we kind of go through the plot and go into some spoilers. Yeah, I'm hoping to do more like this in the future. I know Captain America's coming out soon, so I'm definitely gonna be doing a review of that. So be sure to check it out, and be sure if you saw this movie, let me know your thoughts in the comments below because I'd love to know what you thought of the film. Or if you have any other questions, I know my my story was a little choppy, but I can do my best to answer those in the comments below. So yeah, be sure to like, follow, follow me on other social medias and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos. Peace.